Welcome to yet another edition of the Daily Report. It's Wednesday, January 19th here in Korea. There's been a notable rebound in COVID-19 infections, and we begin with the latest here on the local front. I have Kwon So-ah standing by. So do start us off then.
Sunny, cases are up again. It is likely due to the weekend factor, but also likely to the rise of the Omicron variants here in the country. So let's take a look at the figure posted as of 12 a.m. That's 5,805 infections, and it is a rise in both domestic transmissions as well as imported cases. And if we go over to our graph, we see that it is not only a jump from the day before by around 1,700 infections, but also compared to last Wednesday, it is an uptick by 1,400, roughly 1,400 infections. Now, there has been an uptick in almost all places across the nation this Wednesday. The capital's whole is back to above 1,000, and Gyeonggi-do province even above 2,000 daily infections. And with that, Korea has accumulated over 705,900 COVID-19 infections, and with 74 additional fatalities, the death toll stands at 6,452. However, there is a continuous downward trend in the number of patients that are in severe or critical conditions, standing in the 500s for the third straight day. Now let's move over to the vaccination figures. Now 85% of the nation's population is fully vaccinated. And if we move over to our booster shots, 24 million, and that's equivalent to 46.8% of the population have now gotten their additional COVID-19 vaccine shot. Let's go over to the figures abroad. We've got a rise by almost 3.9 million daily infections as of noon Korea time, and also more than 9,900 additional fatalities. If we go over to the 20 countries with the highest caseloads, no wonder that we're seeing such a high number in global infections, because the U.S. saw around 1 million new cases as of noon Korea time, and France around 500,000 cases. Meanwhile, in the past day, Italy has surpassed the 9 million mark in its total caseload. And those are the general updates I have for now. I'll have more on the international front in a bit. Back to you, Sunny.
All right, so as always, thank you for now. Up next, I have our Kim Yeon-seung in the studio with the latest government remarks on the local COVID-19 situation. Yeon-seung, welcome back.
Good to be here, Sunny.
Right, so as So-ah mentioned, Korea's COVID-19 tallies appear to be on the rise. Is Omicron driving these numbers up then?
Yes, exactly. So Omicron does seem to be the latest driver of cases, but authorities expect the numbers to go high, even higher, as Omicron is becoming the dominant strain across the nation, especially in areas outside the capital region. Take a listen.
The Omicron spread is accelerating. 1 in 4 new cases are Omicron. The rate of infections is steeply rising in Jeollado, Gyeongsang-buk-do and Gangwon-do provinces.
In the Jeollado provinces, Omicron already makes up close to 60% of the cases and has replaced Delta as the dominant strain. In Gyeongsang-buk-do province, Omicron consists 37% of the cases, and in Gangwon-do 31%. In the capital region, Omicron makes up a little less than 20% of the infections, so it is a little low, but authorities expect the spread to accelerate in the coming days.
During the 3 weeks of extended social distancing, including the Seollal holiday, 80 to 90% of cases would become Omicron. We see that an increase in infected cases would inevitably follow.
In response, officials are preparing a shift in their current prevention strategy into one that's more tailored to Omicron. And if and when daily cases top 7,000, the government will start its transition to this Omicron-targeted system.
Right, Yeon-seung, now do tell us a bit more about this particular strategy against Omicron.
Right, so the strategy will mainly focus on speed and efficiency. It will speed up contact tracing, strengthen quarantine for arrivals, bolster our medical capacity, broaden the use of COVID-19 pills, and mobilize local clinics for testing and treatment. Health authorities are also allocating their limited medical resources in a more selective and efficient way. For example, before, all Omicron patients used to receive care at residential treatment centers, even if they had mild to no symptoms, because health authorities wanted to curb the spread of Omicron by keeping them isolated from the general public. But now that Omicron is already widespread in the community, and because it has been linked to milder illnesses, health authorities now believe that it's more appropriate for Omicron patients to be treated at home. Take a listen to what a senior top health official had to say today.
From today, we are treating Omicron-infected patients at home. And to select and focus our efforts, our residential treatment centers will first give room to high-risk elderly and those with underlying disease.
Right, that was Song Young-lee then. And I understand Prime Minister Kim Buk-yeon, for his part, also touched upon further changes to our vaccine pass system. Yeon-seung, tell us more.
Exactly. So while health authorities are sharpening their edges in the prevention response, they're also loosening their grip on vaccine passes. The Prime Minister said that they plan to enforce vaccine passes in a more flexible way that minimizes confusion and inconvenience. One change that they will be making is broadening vaccine pass exemptions for those who have been hospitalized due to side effects after getting their first vaccine dose. Further tweaks to the vaccine pass rules will be announced on Thursday.
Right, and you'll probably have updates on that. Yeon-seung, regardless of these exemptions, though, I understand authorities remain in strong support for vaccinations, of course, right?
Of course, and I'm glad you brought it up because senior officials in South Korea today also mentioned the importance of getting vaccinated. In fact, Prime Minister Kim and senior health official Son Young-nae on Wednesday repeatedly stressed the importance of getting the booster shots, especially when defending against Omicron. Take a listen.
We need to speed up our third shots. The more we delay it, the more vulnerable we may become to the threat of Omicron.
Health authorities say that while almost 84% of those aged 60 or over have gotten their boosters, 31% of people in their 20s to 30s and only around 27% of foreigners have gotten their top-up shots. According to authorities, groups that have a low rate of vaccinations have also been seeing high rates of infections.
Confirmed patients among foreigners started rising since the fourth week of December and now makes up around 14% of the total infections. We believe it's because of their low rate of vaccinations, especially with their third shots.
Right, which is why we're encouraging them to get their booster shots here. All right, Yeon-seung, thank you for that update. I'll see you back on Thursday. Right, now beyond national borders, Omicron continues to wreak havoc, Soa, and I believe you have more on that, right?
I do, Sunny. Over 18 million COVID-19 infections were posted in the past week, according to the chief of the World Health Organization on Tuesday, and that is a rise by around 20% from the week before. And a country that may be nearing its peak of the Omicron wave in the coming weeks is France, where the daily caseload has gotten dangerously close to 500,000 on Tuesday. The average number of cases in the past 7 days there reached above 300,000. In the WHO's weekly epidemiological study, France had more than 2 million cases, the second highest weekly caseload behind the U.S., with an on-week increase of 26%. Now, Brazil also registered a new single-day high of over 137,000 infections on Tuesday, surpassing its previous record 7 months ago, meaning it is likely that unprecedented numbers may follow, with around 95% of recent cases found to be the Omicron variant. The country is expecting a peak in cases in February, with major cities having cancelled carnival celebrations that are coming up next month as well. Japan on Tuesday logged over 32,000 new infections, its largest caseload since August last year, right after the Tokyo Summer Olympics. The nation is expected to impose new antivirus measures under a so-called quasi-emergency state in Tokyo and a dozen other prefectures, which includes restrictions on business operations for bars and restaurants, as well as a ban on alcohol sales.
Right, and against that global backdrop, the global health body for its part has warned against taking Omicron lightly, right? So
exactly, Sunny. So the WHO, the head of the organization, said the virus is circulating in a far too intense manner, and that the notion that Omicron is a mild disease can be misleading. And he also warned that it's too early to translate the situation in some countries where the situation seems to be at its peak into hope that the worst is over. Let's take a listen to what else he had to say.
Make no mistake, Omicron is causing hospitalizations and deaths, and even the less severe cases are inundating health facilities. For many countries, the next few weeks remain really critical for health workers and health systems.
Although the number of fatalities, which stood at around 45,000 in the past week, was stable for now, the Director General said more tools should be used to prevent fatalities, renewing calls to vaccinate the most vulnerable. In the UK, meanwhile, where daily cases seem to be declining, deaths have actually hit their highest mark in almost a year, with 438 fatalities posted on Tuesday local time. Grim forecasts in the US, that is, warned that complacency can lead to as many as 300,000 more deaths until mid-March, which would mean an accumulated death toll of more than 1 million. Australia, one of the relatively less affected countries in the world before the Omicron wave hit, reported 77 deaths on Tuesday, exceeding its earlier high of 57 last Thursday. The country is expected to further slash its interval for booster shots to 3 months from the earlier 4.
Right, so in talking about booster shots, the WHO, I believe, has voiced concern about booster shots for teenagers.
Right, Sunny, a chief scientist at the WHO said for children as well as healthy adolescents is what she said, that there's no evidence that these younger people need boosters, and further recommendations will be discussed later at a meeting which will be held by a technical expert body within the World Health Organization. This chief stressed that it is the vulnerable population that has to be protected with these additional shots. Let's take a listen.
Those are our elderly populations, the immunocompromised, people with underlying conditions, but also healthcare workers, because if a lot of healthcare workers get infected, as we see now, they can be out sick, and we don't want them getting severely ill. So to reserve boosters for that population.
Right, I suppose that is one particular strategy then. On an optimistic note now, Soa, Pfizer's oral pill may work against Omicron. Tell us a bit about this.
Right, we did talk about the effectiveness of Paxlovid yesterday a bit, citing a study in Israel. And now what Pfizer shared in a release on Tuesday is the results of multiple lab studies which demonstrated that one of the drug's key ingredients, nirmatrelvir, is effective against the Omicron variant. It was able to stave off an enzyme that the virus needs to replicate in both the Omicron and the original strain. 3 studies were cited in the press release showing similar results. This is good news amid uncertainty over the effectiveness of other existing treatments, as well as studies showing reduced efficacy of vaccines when it comes to the Omicron variant, that is. However, Pfizer and also health experts continue to say that vaccines are the best protection against hospitalizations and deaths, regardless of these great results showing that the treatments are working well on the Omicron variant.
Right, of course, as the saying goes, prevention is better than cure. So thank you for that. I'll see you on Thursday.
My pleasure.
We begin our news segment today over in Saudi Arabia, where President Moon Jae-in met with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman for talks on largely green growth. Our Blue House correspondent Kim Min-jae reports from Riyadh.
South Korea and Saudi Arabia have agreed to expand the horizon of their cooperation to promising areas like the hydrogen economy. On Tuesday, President Moon Jae-in met with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in Riyadh.
President Moon said the two countries have been cooperating in 5 areas: energy, smart infrastructure, digitalization, healthcare, and SMEs. He expressed hope they can take cooperation in future industries like hydrogen energy, nuclear and defense, intellectual property, and medicine to the next level.
On the occasion of President Moon's visit, the two sides signed 4 MOUs related to hydrogen cooperation. One calls for jointly developing green hydrogen, which is produced from renewable energy sources. Another allows South Korea to secure supplies of hydrogen and ammonia from Saudi Arabia, while Seoul helps Riyadh construct hydrogen-powered vehicles and fueling stations. President Moon also expressed hope South Korea, which is highly competitive in terms of AI and big data, can take part in the construction of Saudi Arabia's mega project called NEOM Smart City. It's part of Riyadh's Vision 2030, a framework to reduce the kingdom's dependence on oil, diversify its economy, and develop its public sector. The Blue House said the leaders also discussed nuclear energy and weapons exports, with Prince Mohammed calling South Korea a good partner. Later in the day, President Moon attended a business forum where he said clean energy, future city construction, and healthcare are three key areas in which the two sides can work together. He stressed that cooperation in the hydrogen sector will be key in the carbon-neutral era.
사우디의 그린 수소와 블루 수소 생산 능력과 한국의 수소 활용 유통 능력을 결합한다면 양국은 함께 수소 경제를 선도할 수 있을 것입니다.
President Moon arrived in Riyadh Tuesday for a two-day official visit. He was greeted at the airport by Prince Mohammed himself. The Blue House quoted the Crown Prince's office as saying it's a special case and reflects the importance of South Korea-Saudi relations.
Before wrapping up his trip on Wednesday, President Moon will meet with the Secretary General of the Gulf Cooperation Council to announce a resumption of free trade talks with a six-member Gulf group. It brings together Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, Oman, and Qatar, which account for 68% of South Korea's crude imports. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News, Riyadh.
North Korea has shared a photograph of the country's most recently tested missile. South Korea, for its part, says it's a missile that it can intercept. Our Peonji reports.
A photo released by North Korea's state-run media on Tuesday shows that what the regime fired the day before appears to be its KN-24 missile. The North's KCNA reported that the regime conducted a test of its tactical guided missiles and claimed that the two missiles precisely hit an island target in the East Sea. Tactical guided missiles are short-range weapons used in the immediate combat area. The KN-24 resembles the U.S. Army's tactical missile system and is typically launched from what's called a TEL, or a wheeled transporter erector launcher. It's known to be able to fly on a complicated trajectory to evade interception.
KN-24 missiles can maneuver easily, making them difficult to be detected by ballistic missile defense radars. So with the defense radar South Korea currently has, intercepting this missile would be tricky.
This marks the fourth time that the North has launched this type of missile. It last fired the KN-24 in March 2020, after testing it twice in August 2019. But regarding the latest launch, South Korea said it has the ability to detect and intercept it.
Our military has the capability to detect and intercept this weapon, and we're continuing our efforts to strengthen our defense systems.
Seoul's military had earlier confirmed on Monday that the North launched two projectiles that appear to be ballistic missiles from an airfield in its capital city of Pyongyang. It said that the missiles flew about 380 kilometers at a maximum altitude of 42 kilometers. The latest missile was the fourth time this year that the North had tested some type of projectile. The previous two launches involved what the North claimed to have been hypersonic missiles, which are capable of maneuvering at very high speeds. Peunji, Arirang News.
In other news, global oil prices have hit a fresh high. The surge follows an attack on oil facilities in the UAE earlier on Monday that has compounded concerns over possible disruptions in global supplies. Our Kim Sung-min has more.
Benchmark oil prices hit a 7-year high on Tuesday as global political tensions involving major producers like the United Arab Emirates are exacerbating the already tight supply outlook. Brent crude futures rose 1.2% to $87.50 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures jumped 1.6% to over $85. Both futures are at their highest since October 2014. Though there have been some fluctuations over the past year, the oil prices are trending upward into the new year. This follows the growing geopolitical tensions in the Middle East, such as a drone and missile attack by Yemen's Houthi group on fuel trucks in the United Arab Emirates on Monday, putting a strain to the already tight supply. The supply has remained constrained despite growing optimism that the pandemic-induced slowdown in demand will recover. The Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries has agreed to produce an extra 400,000 barrels per day, but some of its members are struggling to pump at their allowed capacities due to underinvestment and outages. And the sizzling start to 2022 is forecast to extend throughout the year. Goldman Sachs forecasts that global benchmark Brent crude will hit $100 a barrel in the third quarter. OPEC also maintained a confident outlook that the market will remain well supported by robust demand. Kim Sung-min, Arirang News.
Conscious consumption, or green consumption, so to speak, is adding greater momentum to the popularity of refurbished products, whose list itself is also growing. Here's Yoon Jin.
This is a furniture store in Paju, a city in Gyeonggi Province. At first glance, everything looks new, but on sale at almost half their original prices. This so-called refurbished retail store collects products that have been returned or used as display items. A survey conducted on 500 people that purchased refurbished furniture revealed that 8 out of 10 people asked responded with satisfaction. The market for these refurbished goods has been growing primarily around home appliances and furniture. But these days, it has expanded to include daily essential household goods and even food items. The reason such items are available is because COVID-19 has led to a shift in consumption trends to non-face-to-face shopping, which consequently has led to more returns and inventory at logistics centers being quickly moved on to the refurbished items market.
Because online shopping requires people to make purchases without actually looking at products, there are more returns. We are seeing almost a 50% increase in items here compared to before the pandemic.
These refurbished items stores that offer grade A products at grade B prices are becoming popular very quickly. Sales at 14 refurbished item retail stores across the country operated by a single company jumped almost $8.4 million in the 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic. There are no accurate statistics on the overall market size for refurbished goods, but the distribution industry estimates the size to be around $1.67 billion. The series of events, such as COVID-19 causing financial hardship, as well as non-in-person shopping leading to an increase in purchase returns, has brought the refurb market into the spotlight. Yoon Jin, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. Microsoft announced Tuesday that it's set to acquire Call of Duty maker Activision Blizzard for $68.7 billion in cash, the largest deal in the sector. Microsoft's offer of $95 per share is actually 45% higher than the value when markets closed on Friday. The deal would also make the maker of the Xbox the third largest gaming company by revenue. According to Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, the company is looking to push further into metaverse platforms through the acquisition. And despite the massive price tag, experts say it's a fair price.
I think that from Microsoft's perspective, they're getting a bargain because they're going to really vastly expand their library.
Microsoft has been making major investments in gaming in recent years, scooping up Minecraft maker Mojang Studios and ZeniMax in multi-billion-dollar deals. Despite Microsoft's takeover, Bobby Kotick will continue to serve as CEO of Activision Blizzard. Golden sand on Peru's coastline turned black on Sunday after an oil spill affected kilometers of shoreline. According to the country's environment minister, the oil spill occurred while a ship was supplying the La Pampilla refinery, affecting at least 2 kilometers of the country's central coast. While the Peruvian Agency for Environmental Assessment and Enforcement say it has begun an investigation to determine what caused the oil spill, some are blaming the recent high tides on the volcanic eruption in Tonga. 2 people have reportedly drowned off a beach in Peru due to massive waves felt in the aftermath of the eruption. According to a report released Tuesday by Amazon, a Brazilian environmental NGO, the area of rainforest destroyed in the Amazon last year reached 1,362 square meters. That's 17 times the size of Seoul. The area lost in 2021 is nearly 30% more than in 2020 and the largest since 2012.
The NGO on its website warned that the destruction of the Amazon rainforest is causing serious consequences, including loss of biodiversity, threats to the survival of indigenous people, and worsening global warming. Some blame loose punishments for environmental crimes in the rainforest after President Jair Bolsonaro took office. According to recent data, penalties for environmental crimes in the Amazon rainforest fell from 688 cases from 2014 to 2018 to just 44 cases from 2019 to 2020. In response, an organization consisting of ecologists, scientists, and lawyers filed a complaint with the International Criminal Court against President Bolsonaro last year, accusing him of being responsible for the destruction of the rainforest. 이승재, Arirang News.
Alternative meat products are becoming quite popular, fueled by greater public interest in the health of people and their environment in the wake of COVID-19. Do take a look.
Look at this deliciously fried chicken, beef marinated in soy sauce on top of a bowl of rice. And there is a special secret behind these.
Take a look at those dishes. You might think that they are made of meat, but in fact, all of them are meatless. Along with the growing popularity of the concept's valuable consumption, now meat substitutes have become a new trend.
Here is a vegetarian restaurant in Seoul. At here, all dishes you can find on the menu are meatless, as they're all made with alternative meat. What does the dish taste like? To find an answer, I tried it myself.
I really enjoy this meal. As for chicken, it's really juicy, but still it kind of, its texture, it was more like mushroom. But for this one, if you take a look at this, its texture and the structure, it really resembles the one with the beef. Particularly those layers, it really are very much similar to the beef, and its taste was just perfect. It's just like so much like beef.
그러면 이 대체육들은 어떻게 만드신 거세요?
대부분의 식물성 단백질의 주 재료는 밀이랑 콩을 사용하고 있습니다.
The number of restaurants serving a meat alternative has increased recently.
처음에는 되게 신기해하다가 나중에는 이제 소화가 너무 잘 된다고 해서 단골이 되시는 분들이 많이 있어요. 맛이 물론 있다고도 얘기해 주시고. 개업을 2019년도에 했는데 그때보다 어쨌든 매출이 1.5배에서 2배 정도는 사실 늘었어요.
The alt meat market is growing rapidly around the world. The size of the market, which is about $3.7 billion back in 2015, is expected to surpass the $6 billion mark by 2023. While alternative meat was considered as a special food, only specifically targeting vegetarians in the past, these days, consumers are now looking for plant-based meat to realize valuable consumption. In fact, according to a survey on alt meat, most respondents said they are interested in alternative meat as they care about health and environment.
코로나19 확산으로 건강식에 대한 관심이 높아졌을 뿐만 아니라 MZ세대의 친환경 가치 소비 열풍으로 인해 비건이 자연스럽게 트렌드로 자리 매긴 하면서 대체육 시장 또한 성장하고 있는데요. 비건 식품은 생산 및 소비 과정에서 탄소를 배출을 덜하고 육류 소비를 하지 않음으로써 어떤 친환경적인 식품 생산 및 소비로 인정받기에 ESG 경영이 대두되고 있는 요즘 식품 기업들은 대체육 사업을 통해서 이런 ESG 경영에 동참할 수 있다는 것도 대체육 시장이 성장하게 된 이유라고 생각합니다.
And now we see more and more alt meat startups around us. I visited a plant-based meat company, and here I could find various alternative meat products with different shapes and tastes. I grilled it on the spot to see the texture and taste of the alternative meat, and I couldn't really tell a huge difference between the plant-based meat and the real one.
저 기름이 나오네.
이렇게 시즐링이 나오게 구현을 했고요. 이게 시즐링이 나오면서 마이야르 반응도 같이 일어나요.
Beet and cacao powders were used for coloring the meat alternative.
보다 고기와 유사하게 식감을 보완하고 소비자들이 즐길 수 있는 보다 다양한 제품을 출시하는 것을 목표로 하고 있습니다.
Meat substitutes have emerged as a blue chip in the food industry amid the pandemic. However, meat substitutes products still face many challenges related to taste, texture, and nutrition that should be overcome.
식물성 단백질이 동물에게 실험했었을 때 성장에 있어서 좀 부족한 부분이 있었다. 그래서 그 부분을 채워줄 수 있는 새로운 종의 아미노산이 동물들을 키우거나 또는 이것들이 사람들에게 적용이 됐었을 때 필요하다라는 그런 연구 결과가 있었었는데요. 영양적인 부분들을 충분히 보강할 수 있도록 많은 연구가 진행이 되고 있습니다.
The increase of health and environmental awareness among consumers is expected to propel the growth of the alternative meat market for a while. This has been 신세변.
Come January 20th, that would be Thursday this week, US President Joe Biden marks his first anniversary in office at the White House. In today's panel discussion, we delve into his efforts over the past 1 year. I have Professor Kim Yoon-wook from the Korean National Diplomatic Academy. Welcome back, Professor Kim.
Thank you.
I also have Professor Im Eun-jung from Koongju National University. It's a pleasure to have you back, Professor Im.
Thank you.
Right, Professor Kim, according to the latest Gallup monthly poll, US President Joe Biden stands just above former President Donald Trump with a 43% approval rating. Now, Mr. Trump's approval rating at 37% was the lowest among the last 7 US leaders. How do you explain that as Mr. Biden's public opinion poll?
I think, at the time when there was general election between Trump and Biden, it was only 2020 that everybody was expecting Trump to be reelected, but COVID came in and things have changed and Biden became a president of the United States. So I think the COVID situation is another factor that lowers the public rate of President Biden. Only 60% of American people are vaccinated. And new variant of COVID is spreading in the United States. So I think people is getting tired of COVID situations. But more important factor, I think, is inflation situation in the United States. Because of COVID, I think the United States, did too much quantitative easing, which made a lot of inflation going on in the United States, and tapering now is too late to catch up with the to deal with the inflation situation. And also, maybe lastly, the foreign policy issues. Afghanistan withdrawal last summer, that was, I think, the critical event that made Biden to be unpopular. I mean, withdrawal is fine, but why did you withdraw the U.S. forces from Afghanistan that way? That hampered all the situations as Afghanistan, ruined the reputation of the United States, the international communities, things like that.
Right. And aside from the situation over in Afghanistan, Professor, President Biden, though, has pledged to restore U.S.'s role in global affairs and has since re-engaged in multilateral initiatives, including the World Health Organization, the Paris Agreement, and so forth. How do you assess his efforts thus far?
Well, his first year, I would say it was somewhat meaningful because, as you just mentioned, especially global issue like climate change, it was, of course, it is a scientific fact, and it is an issue that every single country has to cooperate together. But as we all remember, President Trump did have a different view on the climate change. So climate change-like issue, definitely U.S.'s leadership, of course, it's not the only factor, but it is a very, very, very important factor to, again, to improve the situation. So in that sense, I will say, again, that his first year was somewhat meaningful. But the thing is, as you just mentioned, Biden during his campaign period, his catchphrase was, again, we're going to restore the soul of America. And the soul of America includes like a democracy, human rights, or those, so-called liberal approach for the those global issue. So, of course, we can agree with the idea, but the thing is, the Biden administration used those so-called the soul of America for targeting some specific challenging countries like China or Russia. So his multilateral approach was partially done, again, with the ally and like-minded countries or some specific countries in the specific regions. So that is why I will say, of course, his first year was meaningful, but the whole accomplishment still remained as like just limited.
Right. And before we delve into Biden's relationships with China and Russia, Professor Kim, what is your assessment of ties between Seoul and Washington under the Biden administration?
I think Professor Im touched upon this issue a little bit, but I think Biden is trying to make the United States back in international communities, which is different from President Trump. Maybe President Trump is only thinking about how America is about, what his economic situations of the United States is about. But I think Biden wants the United States hegemony back as happened before the Trump began his term. But different ways, because the United States does not have much influence doing everything alone. It needs some help from allies and partners. So that's what Biden is trying to do. He's trying to mobilize all the allies and partners to deal with China issues. But I think there are a lot of questions from allies. I mean, does the U.S. has the same capabilities and power as it used to have? I mean, what kind of public goods can you get from the United States if we are sidelining with the United States to pressure China? So I think that's the fundamental question. And I think more going narrowly, I think U.S. and South Korea have some gaps in threat perceptions now. Before, North Korea threat was the common threat perception we shared. But now the United States want the U.S.-South Korea alliance to be geared more towards pressuring China rather than North Korea. And current Moon Jae-in government thinks that North Korea is not a threat anymore. So I think the two countries is not sharing a very commonized threat perception anymore. I think this is a very important homework that we need to solve in the future.
So do you suppose that perception may change if we have a new administration in power in May?
If the opposition party candidate comes in, I think he will pretty much gear towards more on the U.S. side to deal with China. But I think the ruling party candidate, his foreign policy tendency is pretty much same as Moon Jae-in government, trying to be balanced between U.S. and China. So I think if new government comes in South Korea, I think definitely the alliance sharing threat perception will definitely change.
Right. And staying with bilateral ties, Professor Im, under the Trump administration, there was quite a bit of friction between Seoul and Washington with regard to defense sharing costs and the possible withdrawal of U.S. troops from the Korean Peninsula. Are these issues now no longer concerns under the Biden administration?
Well, any alliance can have any problem all the time. So I won't say, we are completely free from that kind of concern. Anytime, those similar issues can pop up. But probably more, how would you say, serious challenges these days, as just Professor Kim mentioned, again, the strategic calculations are not exactly identical between the two allies. That's definitely one big thing. And the other thing is, again, America is, again, economic power, as Professor Kim mentioned. You know, it's not really strong or, how would you say, powerful economically as much as, again, it used to be. So now America, especially the Biden administration, is trying to reshore, right, reshore the industries, you know, which means they want to get the industries back to the United States. So they will be very much interested in economic benefit or investment from its partner countries, like, of course, Korea. So if we record the summit between the two presidents in May last year, again, President Moon, his delegation was full of all this, you know, entrepreneurs and big conglomerates CEOs. So they committed huge investment to the United States, which was a really big thing. So again, any problem can pop up, but probably interesting issue will be economy-related things, I think.
Right. And moving on to broader regional issues, Professor Kim, what are your thoughts on the Biden administration's efforts to engage North Korea? You have mentioned that the focus appears to be more in China, but thus far, despite Pyongyang's recent missile testings, the US has spoken about the need for dialogue without any conditions. What are your thoughts on their efforts?
I think the basic direction is correct. I mean, the US definitely needs to and wants to open a working level talk with Kim Jong-un, which has been the US posture before. I mean, Trump government had a direct talk with Kim Jong-un, which is top-down approach, but that is very exceptional from the US perspective. I think, you know, in order to make things solved thoroughly, I think there needs to be a working level talk between two countries. Then if there comes up some rough and detailed agreement, I think the president would shake hands and sign the agreement. So I think that was the you know, direction. But I think you know, Kim Jong-un is not ready for working level talk. I mean, the previous lesson we can think about is the six-party process, in which six parties came together with the goal of verify of denuclearization of North Korea. But North Korea stepped out of the multilateral talk when there were talks about, you know, what kinds of you know, nuclear programs and weapons you have. You need to report everything, and also let's talk about what kinds of procedure would be there to verify the nuclear program in North Korea. So I think North Korea does not want to go into that level. I don't think they are ready for working level talk. So I think it's not the problem of Biden government, but I think it is the problem of Kim Jong-un. Maybe Kim Jong-un does not want to go into specific procedure to denuclearize itself. More roughly, I think maybe Kim Jong-un is not ready to denuclearize itself. So I think this is very big you know, problem in the Korean Peninsula, which I don't think will be solvable whatever government in the United States comes in.
Right. And staying with that, it's been less than 3 weeks since the start of this new year, 2022, Professor Im, and already North Korea has conducted several missile testings. Having said that, do you foresee a resumption in talks between Pyongyang and Washington in the near future?
Well, I cannot be that optimistic, to be very honest. You know, this delivery system has shown some improvements technologically, which means, again, the cost, right? The cost for the resuming the negotiations goes up too. So as the burden for the government, and not only for the Washington, for our government too, is increasing. So in that sense, I cannot be very optimistic about a possibility of resuming the dialogue soon. And another, just in timing-wise, again, our government. The term is ending, and we are also, waiting for the big event to get the presidential election. What's only like a 1.5 month left. So, well, I would say, it'll be very difficult to have another round of the talks with this incumbent partners.
Right. Professor Kim, what are the prospects of the Biden administration signing perhaps an end-of-war declaration here for the Korean Peninsula amid North Korea's nuclear ambitions?
I think it's not the problem of Biden government, but it's Kim Jong-un, whether it's going to be signed or not. I think, South Korea and the United States have agreed upon the contents of end-of-war statement. I mean, the contents would not be something that North Korea has requested, which are like sanctions should be relieved, and also the U.S.-South Korea joint military exercises should be canceled, things like that. But I think from the U.S. perspective, U.S. forces in Korea is very important asset to deal with North Korean threats. And maybe, the United States very keen about the end-of-war statement to be something legal so that it will have an impact on the United Nations command future. But I think even though that will be the U.S. posture, I think, U.S. and South Korea, I think have agreed upon what kinds of content would be there in the end-of-war statement. But I think the problem is Kim Jong-un. I don't think Kim Jong-un would accept that. I mean, new government would come in South Korea sooner or later. And if there is no sanction lift, the current North Korean dire economic situation would not easily solved throughout the end-of-war statement. I mean, that would just probably be something that makes the U.S. and South Korea to come up to a mutual disarmament talk rather than just focusing on North Korea to be denuclearized. But that itself is also not easy by end-of-war statement. So I think, Kim Jong-un perspective, end-of-war statement without all those contents would not be something that would be beneficial for Kim Jong-un's North Korea.
Right, I see. Professor Im, come Friday, President Biden and his Japanese counterpart Fumio Kishida will hold virtual talks. Now, pundits claim the two leaders will probably touch upon North Korea's latest displays of defiance. Do you agree?
Yes, I think so. And but probably bigger issue between Washington and Tokyo is obviously the maritime security issue, especially in the South China Sea, East China Sea. Free and open Indo-Pacific, vision, strategy, whatever you call. It was an idea actually suggested by Tokyo, if we recall the past years. So, well, Japan is trying to use the situations, again, the China-U.S. Strategic rivalry, all this, maritime security realignment is definitely, I would say, the top priority of Tokyo. Having had that top priority, of course, North Korea has all this, technological improvement in terms of delivery system. That's definitely does provide a good reason for Tokyo to be, how would you say, more defensive for themselves or to more aggressive or even offensive to the Pyongyang. Well, so I would say again, they'll definitely discuss on the North Korea related issue along with the FOIP.
Right. Professor Kim, tensions between the Biden administration, as Professor Im has mentioned, between countries like China and Russia remain quite high. What are the implications of this reality on perhaps the U.S.'s hopes to reassert its role in the global arena?
Yes, the Biden government made it clear that the major threats are Russia and China. And they're doing measures to deal with those two superpowers. But I think, paradoxically, the new government's national security strategies and most recent national defense strategies, which came out at the end of Biden-Trump government, specifies that the U.S. is only allowed and capable of waging only one warfare in the world simultaneously. So maybe if something happens with Russia and China together, the U.S. would not be able to deal with those two superpowers, two warfares. I mean, that's why I think this is a little bit disappointing to allies. But what the U.S. is announcing as its messages in case of the Russia and the Ukraine issue is that if Russia invades Ukraine, U.S. and NATO members would pose huge sanctions on Russia. But that's it. The U.S. doesn't say that it will go in there to fight for Ukraine against Russia. There's no messages like that. So I think these kinds of messages of the United States is, I think, giving very bad signals to allies and partners, maybe also Taiwan people, Taiwan government. So definitely Russia and China is getting together to deal with the United States, which is no good for the United States. Rather than focusing on China, it has to deal with two countries at the same time. So strategically, dealing with two superpowers and dealing with the allies and partners, I think this is a very big quagmire that faces the United States for now.
Right, and keeping in mind what Professor Kim has just said, Professor Im, I ask you the difficult question then. What is your outlook with regard to the Biden administration's future course of action amid these challenges?
Well, yeah, again, the U.S.-China rivalry, the strategic rivalry competition is very multidimensional. It is not only about maritime security or military capability, because now we are living in the era of fourth industrial revolution. All this tech competition is getting more and more increasingly intense. And from U.S.'s point of view, you know, it cannot be it cannot be a taker of whatever those rules made by somebody else. So U.S. definitely wants to remain as a rule maker, and they want to provide a standard, a new market. So, you know, but the thing is, as we just discussed, you know, U.S.'s power, economic power, is not really that level. That is why they're trying to, how would you say, to strengthen the partnership with the like-minded countries, and Russia is another. So, but you know, if you think about all this U.S.'s current capability and how just a wide strategic competition-related spectrum, again, I'll say U.S. will keep emphasizing the partnership with the like-minded countries. That might be their strategy and the tactics and then approaches that will keep taking.
All right, Professor Im, as always, thank you very much for your insight today. Professor Kim, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you.
Right, well, it's time to say goodbye now. There is much snowfall here in the capital region, so do take care. We'll be back tomorrow, that is Thursday, with more coverage. Join us then.